Even with an hour less sleep, I guess. Um, the Gemara that we learned, uh, I guess starting from the Mishnah, the previous Mishnah on page 37b, it spoke about the different places where one waves the lulav during Hallel. One of the questions on that Mishnah is, why does the Mishnah not talk about waving it during the bracha? And doesn't mention anything about the waving during the bracha. It only mentions about the waving during Hallel. And we saw that Tosfos actually touches on that issue, and he says that and this is like in the Tosfos of Behoidu, and that Tosfos on page 37b, towards the end of that Tosfos, the end of that paragraph, he says, B'shas habracha, we don't find if you're obligated to wave it or not. In other words, our Mishnah talks about waving it during Hallel. When you say Hallel, you wave it. The B'shas habracha, we don't find if you're obligated to. But he brings two proofs, and I mentioned them on Friday, that a child that knows how to wave it, he's obligated in lulav, and that implies that even at the time of the bracha, you should wave it, because children often, or at certain ages, they normally don't say Hallel, and so it's obviously saying b'shas the bracha at the time of the blessing. That's when you wave it. So even though our Mishnah talks about Hallel, skips about the bracha when you initially recite the blessing on the lulav, and it only talks about the Hallel, but Tosfos says there seems to be a proof that you would wave it even during the bracha from this case of the child that knows how to wave it, he's obligated. And then there's another proof about someone who wakes up early, is leaving early in the morning, and it talks about him being able to wave the lulav, and it uses the word waving even before Nate's Hachama, even before sunrise. He's waving the lulav and fulfilling the mitzvah in a case of need. Normally, most mitzvahs we try to wait to do until sunrise. But in a case of need, you could do it even before sunrise, in between dawn and sunrise, which many opinions follow this a concept of 72 minutes before sunrise is dawn. In between during those 72 minutes, you would be allowed to wave the lulav, and it's the understanding is it's talking about, you're not saying Hallel, then you're just fulfilling the mitzvah of waving it, and you would do you fulfilling the mitzvah of lulav, and it says over there waving it. So that implies that during the bracha that you would wave it at while you say the bracha. So Tosfos had two proofs.
Rabbi, is that the same with tefillin?
Would you be able to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin? If I'm not mistaken, it talks about, I don't know if it mentions tefillin there, but I have to look it up. I don't know. I know it mentions, Tosfos brings that it mentions their shofar and Megillah. I don't know if it mentions tefillin. I don't want to say for sure. But if I'm not mistaken, this would probably apply to davening. If a person, is having surgery, often they like to make these surgeries at 6 o'clock in the morning or something, and you want to daven before. So, so I believe that that's the halacha about davening. And probably tefillin would be the same. Well, tefillin is limited to Misha Yakir. Maybe that's why it doesn't mention tefillin. Tefillin, the earliest you put tefillin on is Misha Yakir, when you could recognize someone, which must be about maybe a half hour after, or 40 minutes after, something like that, after dawn. So like there's the shul here has a minyan normally at 6:30 in the morning. But now that we switched the clocks, the 6:30 service, they don't do, because you can't put tefillin on that early. It's now a 6:50 minyan. They call it 6:30, but it really doesn't start till 6:50, because you can't put your talis or your tefillin on until 6:50. Not 100% sure, but the Yevid, maybe there is a leniency that you could do it before if it's a time of great need. So maybe there is an extra leniency Again, I'd have to look it up, but generally with talis and tefillin, the earliest time is Mishayakir. So maybe that's why it's not mentioned in that paragraph. Okay, so getting back to this discussion, so we saw Tosfos. Other commentaries do mention this issue. Why doesn't the Mishnah say about the menanim, about the waving during the bracha? Why doesn't it say? Why doesn't it mention it? It only mentions during Hallel. So one of the commentaries says that it doesn't mention it because it's obvious. If you're doing the waving during Hallel, for sure you got to wave during the bracha. So again, Tosfos holds that Tosfos says that you would wave it. He doesn't explain why the Mishnah doesn't mention it. Another commentary, the Retiree says that it's a kal v'chomer for sure. If you wave during Hallel, of course you got to wave the lulav. Again, this is all based on the fact that we know there's a statement in the Gemara that says once you lift up the lulav, you fulfill the mitzvah. Mida'agbe nafakba. So that statement is what's behind this. They're not mentioning that statement, but that's really what's going on behind the in between the lines over here. Is so you are yaitza with lifting it up. Do you need to wave it during the time of the bracha? So we said Tosfos has proofs that you do. The Meiri learns that. And it's also brought in other Rishonim, the Ritva, the Ran, that if you have to wave it during Hallel, for sure you should wave it at the time of the bracha. It's almost like a kal v'chomer. But there are other shitas that say there are other opinions in halacha, the Itur and the Shibbolei Haleket. These are two opinions mentioned in Shulchan Aruch often, and the Beis Yosef often brings them down. And they say that the main nianua, the main waving, is Hallel. If you don't have the lulav during Hallel, then you would wave it when you say the bracha. And that would be another reason why it doesn't say it in the Mishnah. It doesn't say it in the Mishnah because you don't do it. You don't do the waving during the bracha. You do it during Hallel. That's the real waving. And what it seems to me is the way they're answering Tosfos's proof. Tosfos had a proof from that case where it says you wake up early in the morning and you wave it. So it sounds like at the time of the bracha you're waving it. The way they're going to answer that proof of Tosfos is that if you're not going to be able to wave it later during Hallel, then do it during the bracha. But really, the main waving is during the Hallel, not during the bracha. That's the way they understand it. So, so this is the discussion here, really, in the commentaries about the waving during the bracha, if that's a necessity or not. Interesting. Of course, we all do all the wavings during the bracha, but there does seem to be sources that the main waving is Hallel. So, so what I guess one of the things we're seeing here is the importance of waving the lulav during Hallel. To some that's the main waving. According to some opinions, that's really the ikar. The main waving is during the Hallel. Now, there's also a discussion about waving the lulav when you say the pasuk. How do you wave it while you say those words? So it's brought down that when you say when you say Hashem's name, in each of those psukim, and Ana Hashem Oshiana, when you say Hashem's name, there is a tradition brought down in the name of Rav Sadia Goyim that you wave the lulav upward during the name Hashem. That's one opinion. Then there's another opinion that says when you say Hashem's name, you don't do any of the wavings, which I think is the more common view, common tradition. that you sort of like stop. Hashem, you don't do the wavings. The other words, you do the wavings. And so it comes out that the word hoidu, the pasuk hoidu, has six different six words besides Hashem's name. So it ends up that each word you do one wave. In the word Ana Hashem Hoshiana has three words besides for Hashem's name. And so therefore each word you do two wavings. I don't know if everyone follows this, at least in the Ashkenaz shul, I think they follow that tradition, that each word they sort of like Hashem, they stop. You know, each word they're sort of like slowly doing. I haven't. I don't know if it's done in Sephardic or I think in Chabad. I don't know if they're so makbid. I'm not sure if we're so careful about it. I haven't seen it brought up. I don't know if any of you are maybe David or Betzalel has any clarity on that. If you're supposed to, in Lubavitch, if they do each word, I don't think I've seen it written. Are you familiar with that? Like each word specifically, by Hoidu you do to the right, and by Lashem you stop, and Ki is to the left. Each word, are we makbid on the specific word? I still do it because I remember from Ashkenaz when I used to daven Ashkenaz, I used to do it. So I always do it that way. I don't know if it's specific. Is it David? Are we makbid that way?
I haven't davened in shul since my stroke, which was 5 years ago.
But I'm saying when you say halal with the lulav, you're not able to hold it.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Maybe Mordechai or Betzalel, I don't know. But I think in Ashkenaz they're careful to do each word. Mordechai, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, we do it. Yeah, in the shuls I daven in Crown Heights, they do it slowly.
That each word you specifically do Haidu to the right, and Lashem you stop, and Ki to the left. So we okay, good, okay. I wasn't sure if like people weren't so careful, or but okay, good to know. So basically, it seems like it's a somewhat of an accepted tradition. Although there is another opinion that says, by the name of Rav Sadia Goin, that you actually do part of the waving is Hashem, you do actually upward. Anyway, and by Ana Hashem, the concept of doing two wavings for each word, I guess, is also the accepted view. It's brought in the Magen Avram, actually. They bring it down from the Magen Avram. So I guess it is probably the accepted tradition. Okay, then, so that's another thing. Now, we also mentioned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva says that he mentioned this story where he saw Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua doing differently than the community. And this is really this story, it opens up somewhat of a can of worms, because it becomes questionable. A few issues come up with this story. I shouldn't say a can of worms, but it really opens up the discussion for some issues. Number one, why weren't they rebuking the people? In other words, they were davening. This is what Rabbi Akiva saw. He sees them doing one thing and the community doing a different thing. So number one, why didn't they tell like the community, what to do? And or why didn't they do like the community, or and if it's wrong, why did they tell them? And it just seems interesting that Rabbi Akiva just says this as a story to teach us that we're supposed to follow this opinion of Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, even though everyone does it wrong almost, in a certain sense. That's what the story sounds like. The commentaries sort of like talk about these issues, and then the other issue about this story is it is a little vague. Did these rabbis, they did it by Ana Hashem Hoshiana? That's for sure, and they didn't do it by Ana Hashem Atzlichana. But did they do it at Hoidu Lashem Kitayv, the first one and the last one? Or did they also not do it there and they only did it at Ana Hashem Hoshiana? So we learned that the way we translated the Mishnah, which is the way the Rishonim, some of the Rishonim learn, of course, that these rabbis, they also waived the lulav by Hoidul Hashem Ki Tov Kili Olam Chasta at the beginning and the Hoidul Hashem Ki Tov Kili Olam Chasta at the end. And in the middle case by Ana Hashem Mashiach, the middle pasuk over there of Ana Hashem Mashiach, that's where they waived it, but not by Ana Hashem Atzlichana. So that was the in other words, the fact that he doesn't mention those is only because his main thing is because we're not debating about Hoidul Hashem. That for sure you waive it at. It's only about Ana Hashem Mashiach, Ana Hashem Atzlichana, which Beis Hillel said one way, Beis Shammai said the other way. So on that is where there is a discussion. So the Taisus Yom Tov and Rav Yod, they learned the way I translated it. However, there is an opinion. The Rav on the Mishnayos, the Rav Vadia Bartanura, he seems to understand it that they only waived it. They only waived it by Ana Hashem Mashiach and not by Hoidul Hashem Ki Tov. Very interesting. And so Rabbi Akiva seems to, why is he bringing that story according to that? He's bringing the story. So that means that he followed, he believed that he followed that, even though Beis Hillel said the other way. But Rabbi Akiva felt this is the more correct way. Maybe it sounds like maybe Rabbi Akiva felt that's the halacha. But in any event, to answer some of the points that I brought up. So in the Sefer B'nayahu, he brings that the fact that Rabbi Akiva is telling us this story, he's teaching us that if you follow Beis Shammai in this scenario, it's not a problem. Even though when it comes to Shema, we specifically say that don't follow Beis Shammai. When it comes to Shema, if you follow Beis Shammai, you're going against the halacha, the accepted halacha. But here we see that Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua did not protest when the people were waving the lulav at Ana Hashem Atzlichana. So that the fact that they didn't protest shows us that this is not one of those cases where if you do the waving like Beis Shammai, you add on an extra waving, that's not a problem. Now, there are cases where we're not allowed to follow the non-accepted opinion, but it seems that this is only just a minhag. It's an extra. You're just adding something. You're not subtracting. So in this, it's not a problem to follow, and that's why Rabbi Akiva brings this after this argument of Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, to tell you that you see even the community did it, and Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua didn't protest. So that is, in other words, what we're seeing here is sort of like hints from the Mishnah of how to what extent the halacha follows Beis Hillel versus Beis Shammai. Okay. The next thing I wanted to mention is the Gemara's question. And again, going back to Ezra had asked the question that the Gemara didn't seem to really answer. If the question was, how do we know that you need to do wavings? The Gemara's answer wasn't really a good source. It mentions that there's an obligation to do wavings because it says it by the lulav. It has to be an extra tefach, an extra handbreadth in order to wave it. So you see, you need to wave it. Yeah, but why? What's the origin of that waving? So the way we mentioned a few things. One of them was the way Rashi seems to learn it. It seems to be asking a little different question than what is the original source of waving, but rather who says, why are you so convinced that you have to wave it? Where did we say anything about waving it, that you start off the Mishnah? Where do you wave it? First say that you have to. We're not looking for a source. We're looking for first say, where does it say why where does it say that you have to waive it? And on that, the Gemara answers that there is a source. We saw it before that you need a certain size in order to waive it. So that shows that you have an obligation to waive there's a mitzvah lananeh. It's a mitzvah to waive it. So once it says it there, that shows us that you have to waive it. And so now we're allowed to, once you have a Mishnah that says that there's a mitzvah to waive it, or it implies there's a mitzvah to waive it, so we could have a Mishnah that says, where do you waive it? In other words, now it flows. You first say you have to do something, then you say, how do you do it? That's basically the question the Gemara had. You didn't say I have to do it. Why are you telling me how to do it? And the Gemara's answer is, yeah, we did say you have to do it because it was implied from a previous Mishnah. Okay, that's one way of learning. And that was the way Rashi learned it. And that does answer the question. However, I did find that there is an opinion that understands the Gemara's answer to be that because the halacha is that shiurim, measurements of the Torah, are halacha l'Moshe miSinai. They come from a tradition from Moshe, which means that they're considered biblical. They're a tradition from that Moshe got at Har Sinai. So if there's a measurement, in the Gemara's answer is that every lulav that the lulav needs to have 3 tefachim and an extra tefach in order to waive. So that's the source. The source to waive it is actually halacha l'Moshe miSinai. You're asking me what's the source? Who said that you have? Where does it even say what's the source of even waiving it? So according to this, you could actually understand the question to be what's the source, and the Gemara's answer is it's a shiurim, and we know already from before that shiurim are halacha l'Moshe miSinai. So it's the source is halacha l'Moshe miSinai that it has to be you have to waive it. Because if it says in the halacha l'Moshe miSinai you need an extra hand breath in order to waive, that means that the source is so it comes out that another way of learning the Gemara according to this that it is a halacha l'Moshe miSinai, and that would be an answer that's the origin of this.
But Rabbi, not everyone
agrees with
accepts that.
Rabbi,
and the reason why not everyone agrees with that is because some say that the waiving is more of a drabanan, and so there are sources that say it's drabanan, but there seems to be such a view.
Rabbi,
The Chassam Sofer questions: is it the Daraisa, the Rabbanon? It seems that they bring hints from the Ritva, the Rambam, that maybe it is Daraisa. So this could be, again, I didn't see, the commentaries don't exactly connect it. I'm connecting it to this Gemara that you could then learn that that question and the answer of the Gemara is slightly different than we learned, which means what is the original source? And the answer of the Gemara is basically that it's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai. So you could possibly learn it that way. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi, yeah,
yes.
I'm looking at my notes from when I was in the Catskills. I had a class, and it came. The sources of waving the lulav came from Vayikra.
Okay.
I don't have the exact parak.
There's only one place
source states
that mentions the lulav at all.
Yeah, Hazal. Hazal derived that taking klutz shaken as part of the mitzvah.
Okay, we'll have to look through Parshas Emor. It talks about the holidays, so we'll have to take a look there. You're talking about the waving of the lulav, or you're talking about the waving of the sacrifice?
The waving of the lulav.
Yeah.
The waving of the lulav.
All right, we'll have to see. Maybe we'll find something about it. Okay. Very good. So that's just catching up on some of the things that we commentaries discussions on the previous Gemara. Now we mentioned then about the waving of the shtei halechem, the 2 breads. And this is as I mentioned a few times, that the Shtei Halechem was something talked about, commonly mentioned in the Gemaras and the Mishnayos. It was something unique. The famous the Shtei Halechem. It was once a year, but it's called the two breads. Two breads were unique in the two kivsei atzeres. They were special for Shavuos, a special ritual that was done, and they waved them. In fact, it's brought down, at least the Rambam brings down, that they would wave it twice. Once when it was alive, the kvasim, the sheep, and on top of the live sheep, they would wave it. And then afterwards, then after they slaughtered it, they would wave the breads on top of the chazeh v'shoik, the chest or the breast and the chazeh, the
Shank.
shank. Is that the literal translation of? I'm sorry, shoik. The shoik is the thigh. I think that
It's the breast, isn't it?
no, chazeh. Chazeh is the breast.
Yeah.
The shoik would be the thigh.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
Rabbi, did you already talk about the directions, the order of the directions yet?
So we didn't talk about the order. We did say that it's the 6 directions. We didn't really talk about the order, which is a famous two opinions, the two traditions. There's the Ashkenaz tradition, and then I believe the Sephardic and the Hasidim do the other way. But what we did talk about was the question of, do you need to wave it in all 6 directions, the 4 horizontal directions and then the up and down, or is 2 horizontal directions good enough and up and down? And that we did mention. That seems to be a debate, and possibly even that could be the argument in the Gemara, because the Gemara mentions you're waving it. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Meilech umevi." You do this waving forward and backward, bring it back to you, and that is to show lemisha ha'arba ruchei shaloi, to that you're doing it for Hashem. That's what you're showing. You're showing that you're doing it for Hashem, and who owns the daled ruches, and you lift it up and bring it down to show that you're doing the mitzvah for Hashem, who owns the heavens and the earth. Now, the thing is that on a simple level, you'd say, oh, so I want to show that Hashem owns the Daled Ruchais Ha'olam, the 4 directions, so you have to wave it in all 4 directions, right? That would be an understanding, that you want to wave it in all 4 directions. But however, some of the commentaries mention that once you show that Hashem is the ruler over 2 directions, it's automatic that everyone understands the other directions as well would be included. So maybe you don't have to wave it in all those directions. Now, I did want to mention a Maharsha here. The Maharsha says that they're all connected to Torah. What does that mean? He says that when you wave it in these different directions, you're showing that through Torah, Hashem gives existence to the world that in other words, that has 4 directions, or the 6, I should say 6, all 6, because ultimately it's proving that it's emphasizing that it's the Torah that really again, we're talking about the waving of the breads. Again, we're not talking about here. We're jumping back. The Gemara here is talking about the wavings of the breads. We're not jumping to the lulav. Maybe I sort of like jumped into this without clarifying. The Gemara didn't really get to the lulav yet. It's still talking about the waving of the bread, and the waving of the breads. How much was the breads? The breads had 10 isarim, 10 times 43.2 eggs in each. 10 of these 10 esrainas, 10 isarim, which basically means 432 eggs. each of the breads. Now, the 10 symbolizes the Aseres HaDibros, the Torah, it's the luchos, and it's from flour that's refined, symbolizing the Torah. That's from the most refined type of flour, the soilus, not from the kemach. It's from the most it's ground extra, and the two kvasim also symbolize Meiser Merkava. It's all symbolizing Torah. So the Shavuos, and again, it's on Shavuos. So it's symbolizing the Torah. And when you wave that sacrifice, what do you symbolize? What do you symbolize? Again, this is a Marsha. He says what you're symbolizing is that the world exists because of the Torah. So you're waving it to all the different directions, up and down, all the four directions. It's all because the Torah is giving existence to the world. And then the Gemara says that in the Eretz Yisrael, they said another concept, that what is the waving? The waving is because it's actually protecting from these evil winds and from the bad dew, evil dew. And what that refers to, I always like to say when it comes to the lulav that we're sort of protecting from the hurricanes, but in the main point that the Gemara means, I think, is really that in the olden days, well, even today, I guess would be the same thing. Crops could get ruined it's about the crops, that the crops would get ruined if there was hurricane winds or less than hurricane winds. Different, just like when it gets too cold, it causes certain crops to get destroyed. So the ruchais ra'is and the tlalim ra'im seemingly refer to a type of issue with the crops. In addition to that, of course, if you're protected from evil winds, it'll protect us from hurricanes. But I think the main thing that the people were thinking in those days was more about their crops. Seemingly it includes other things as well. So in the West, in Eretz Yisrael, they would say that the waving is when you wave it, that's for ruchos rois, for evil winds that come from all four directions, and because of and this is what I mentioned earlier, that it's possible to say that if you're proving that Hashem owns the world, so that, or the world exists from the Torah, maybe then it's good enough two directions. But if you want to save yourself from evil winds, you better do it in all four directions. So the West holds you got to do it in all four directions. And Rabbi Yochanan, some opinions, as it brought from the Ritva, that two directions would be good enough, horizontal, and then up and down. But in two directions, either east, west, north, south, however you want. But according to the Ma'arava, you would need to do it in all four directions. And then, of course, up and down. So altogether 6. Now, the Marsha here as well, he mentions his along the same lines as what he mentioned earlier, that you're showing that the Torah is what protects from the ruchos ra'is and tlalim ra'im. That it's the Torah that's really protecting you from these bad, evil winds and from the evil dew. So that's a continuation of the Marsha, again, that he's understanding it. Again, we're talking about Shavuos. We're talking about the waving of the shtei halechem, the two breads. The two breads were made out of these 10 Yisraelis, the 10 Yisarans, which symbolize the Aseres HaDibros, the two luchos, and so on. And so that's his understanding that what it's emphasizing to the world is the fact that Torah protects us. Torah gives existence to the world, and Torah protects us from these ruchos rois and tlalim roim. Okay. Now, the next Gemara said that we see from here that shiarei mitzvah are ma'akev de paranos, protects us from any punishment. And he calls this shiarei mitzvah. It's not the ikar of the mitzvah. And Rashi says, what are we talking about? Again, we're talking about the waving of the shtei halechem, the two breads on Shavuos in the Beis Hamikdash, and this waving is doesn't prevent us from being having the kapara, from being atoned, doesn't protect us, and nevertheless, it doesn't prevent us from being atoned. And nevertheless, it works. It protects us from these evil winds. So you see, even like the extra part of the mitzvah, the shiurim of the mitzvah, it's not the main part of the mitzvah, it still protects us. So this is a interesting statement. And then Rava comes along and says that the same thing applies to lulav. All of these same ideas, that somehow you have the in the lulav, you want to show that the world belongs to Hashem, and protects us from these evil winds, and the same concept seemingly whatever we said by the Shtei Alechem should apply to lulav, and so therefore you're going to wave it in all these different directions. So now Rav Acha Bar Yaakov took this a little step further. He says, I like to say that he would say, Dein Gedra Be'ene de Sitna. This is an arrow in the eye of the Satan. So he would, whatchamacallit, he would like say, this is going to knock you. Oh boy, we are doing well. You're going to be destroyed. This is like an arrow in your eye. And basically from the mitzvah of lulav is basically destroying him. He can't cause us to. He's not going to have much to say. He's like very weakened from this mitzvah, and the Gemara says, but don't say it, because you what you do is when you tell, you don't have to say everything. Nicht alles was is emes darf man sagen. There's a Yiddish saying, not everything that's true do you have to say. So it's true, you're knocking the Yetzer Hara, but don't tell him that, because when you tell him that, it causes him to want to fight back. He wants to find some type of sin, get us to sin. He wants to figure out a way to get us to sin. So instead of saying it, you better just keep it quiet, and it helps us. This lulav is a arrow in the eyes of the Satan. He's not going to be able to prevent us from doing mitzvahs. And seemingly what he's saying is that this is not even the main mitzvah. This is like an extra. The nanuim is to some extent an extra, at least according to some opinions, it's more of an extra part of the mitzvah, just like we said by the breads, that's called shiurim mitzvah. It's not ma'akiv. I mean, the truth is we saw that with lulav, because it says kivan da'agba nafakba. Once it lifted up, you did fulfill the mitzvah. So the wavings is called shiurim mitzvah, is not the ikar of the mitzvah. And so we're, by us doing this extra, it's really knocking the Satan. That we're all fulfilling this mitzvah, even though it's not the ikar kapara, the main thing. Anyway, so that was the previous Gemara, and now the truth of the matter is, this is an interesting point. When would he say this? Dain Gira, this is an arrow in the eye of the Satan. When he waved it? When do you wave it? We just mentioned that some opinions say the main waving is only Hallel. Other opinions say that if you do it during Hallel, you have to do it during the bracha. But either way, how do you wave? How do you say this line? Dain Gera des Beine de Sitna. There, in the time of the bracha, you didn't finish all the wavings, and you're saying this. If you're saying it during Hallel, you're interrupting Hallel. You gotta think about this. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, everyone saw that, right? It says Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, he would say this line. But how did he say this line? He did it during the time of the bracha. He didn't finish waving. So what's the pshat? What does it mean over here? So if you learn the main waving is the time of Hallel, so you can say he said this during when he said the bracha to fulfill the mitzvah. He would do this because the main waving is not now; it's really during Hallel. Now, there is a discussion that if you do part of the mitzvah, would you be allowed to interrupt? You started doing the mitzvah already. And this statement, you're saying after you already started. You started the wavings and you didn't finish yet. And you say, Dain Geira Be'enai Desitna. This is an arrow in the eye of the Satan. Would you be allowed to say that after you already started? So one of the commentaries brings down that this would not be like a typical hefsek. It's not a typical hefsek where you're speaking something that's totally disconnected from the mitzvah. What you're saying is really connected to the mitzvah. Din geira be'enei desidna. This is an arrow in your eye. We're going to be protected from evil winds and bad dew, and we're going to be praising Hashem. In other words, it's not really a sichas chulin. It's not really an interruption of a full interruption. So it's possible that this would be considered even during Hallel, possible that it's not considered a regular hefsek. So that brought down the Eater who says that the main wavings is during Hallel, that maybe you could understand. Again, we have a problem. The Gemara says a story, and the story is that the Rav Acha would say this when he waved it. We're trying to answer the problem. So the Eater says, first of all, maybe he said time of the bracha, or Eater holds that the main waving is Hallel. Maybe there's a heter to say it there even during Hallel. It's not a regular hefsek. Maybe it's not considered hefsek, maybe. But what I was mentioning before was if you're doing it at the time of the bracha and you already started waving, so then possibly you're allowed to be mafsik. It's possible that you could be mafsik with because you already did the original part. It's almost like you already ate some. It's almost like eating. You didn't eat a kazayas yet of bread. But you ate some. Once you eat, you said the bracha, you ate. So do we say a similar thing with a mitzvah? I started lighting Shabbos candles. I didn't finish lighting all the Shabbos candles. Can I interrupt with talking? Would there be a possibility to interrupt? So, or you're checking for beer chametz. Would there be a permit to talk after you already started checking? Once you started checking, would it be allowed to interrupt after you already started? And so that would be maybe the same situation here. You said the bracha, you started waving, but you didn't finish the wavings. Would that be appropriate and allowed to interrupt once you already started the wavings? Anyway, so this is, of course, something that deserves to be looked into. There's a mitzvah about this. And the Itur is the one who we saw before, talks about this issue, about saying it during Hallel. So anyway, there's discussion in the commentaries about this and how it fits with halacha of interruption. Okay, now we're up to the Mishnah, the new Mishnah. We're up to the new Mishnah. In the Mishnah, we did some of this. We started the Mishnah, we did a little of the Gemara. The Mishnah was talking about person is coming on the way and he doesn't have a lulav. He was traveling and he sat down to eat. And then he remembers that He didn't shake lulav today. So what is the halacha? So the Mishnah says, when he enters his house, Yitol al shulchanai. He should take the lulav, even if he's by his table eating, he should take the lulav. Even if he's by his table, he's started a meal, he should take the lulav. And then the Mishnah mentions that the whole day is kosher for the lulav. If you didn't do it in the morning, you can do it in the afternoon. Bein harabayim. Bein harabayim means between the evenings, which basically means from the time of chatzos, or half hour after chatzos, which is when it starts getting evening till the night, you would be allowed to shake the lulav. So you have all day really. It's better to do it in the morning. The reason why even mitzvahs and so on, you're supposed to have alacrity. But if you missed in the morning, you could do it in the afternoon. Now,
Rebbe,
the first part of the Mishnah.
Do you have a proof from here that it's okay to shake the lulav in the house? I mean, we do it in the sukkah typically. But they're saying here, as soon as you come home, if you're sitting down to eat, do your lulav first.
So the way they're learning it is Yitol, take it, even though you're al shulchana, you're by your table. Now, does that mean that you should shake it where you're standing? Or does it just mean take it even though you're sitting at your table, get up and go out? So I don't know if it proves
But wait
that
a minute, Rabbi, hold on a second. If you're sitting at your table to eat, the table is in the sukkah.
Oh, right.
So therefore, if you're going to take it at that point, you're inside the sukkah. It's not
Right.
inside the house.
Right. Except that it doesn't have to be that way. If the thing is, there are things that you're allowed to eat outside the sukkah.
But it says
the question is, are we talking about a meal?
It says
it really,
it doesn't say sukkah.
Yeah, it's
but his house is his sukkah during sukkah.
On sukkahs, that is your bias, maybe. But yeah, good point, Ezra. But the thing is that there is a discussion here. Are we talking about a te'ima or a meal? Was he snacking or was this a full meal? See, Rashi brings, if you forgot to shake before you ate, you have to be mafsik su'udasai, lita lulav. To me, that sounds like a su'uda. So that would sound like what Ezra's saying. Of course, you're in your sukkah. The only thing is, I saw one of the commentaries seems to understand it differently. That somehow he understands Rashi to mean even if you're he somehow has a hint from Rashi that even to taste, you're not allowed to taste even before the lulav. I have to look it up what his exact source is. To me, the word su'udasa is sort of like a giveaway that he says, talking about a meal. But in any event, there are heterim situations that a person would be allowed to eat in their house. So again, I don't know if it yeah. Let's say a person is, let's say it's raining. I don't know.
But we're talking about normal situations. I mean, we're not talking about exceptional situations. In normal situations, your soda is in the sukkah.
Is in your sukkah. Yeah, true. Definitely sounds that way.
And the other question I have is, since when do we paskin according to Rashi? I've always heard that you don't paskin according to Rashi.
Oh, that's not a good. I don't like that statement. I've never heard that. You don't paskin like Rashi. Rashi, if you calculate all the times that the halacha follows Rashi and all the times the halacha doesn't follow Rashi, I'm not sure. I would say you might find you have a majority times that we do follow Rashi. Rashi was the common understanding of the Gemara. Are there times we don't paskin like Rashi? Yeah, but I don't know that you have. I don't know if that's a correct statement to say. Rashi gives interpretations. Tosfos gives interpretations. Other Rishonim give interpretations, and generally the halacha follows the majority of the main poskim which is the Rush, the Rif, and the Rambam. So generally, like that's the source, whoever is the majority. So if they follow Rashi's pshat, then we follow Rashi. Very often we follow Rashi for sure. But is it majority? I don't know. That I can't tell you. But it's definitely not. That's not really a correct statement to say we don't paskin like Rashi. There are times we don't paskin like Rashi, true, but it's not like it never happened. Very, definitely a lot of times that we do paskin like Rashi. It boils down to how the other Rishonim understood it as well. We're following a group of Rishonim and their understanding the Gemara based on the contradictions of other Gemaras and how it's reconciled and so on. Okay, so coming back to our Mishnah. So our Mishnah spoke about interrupting your meal to shake lulav, and also shaking lulav throughout the day if a person missed. The Gemara had asked a question that we have another source. There's a Mishnah that talks about a person eating a meal when he's supposed to be davening mincha. And the Mishnah there says that if you started your meal and it's time for mincha, it's okay. You can still continue eating. So why does our Mishnah say they have to interrupt? And there it doesn't say that. You can finish eating. So the Gemara had an answer. There's a difference. One is talking about when you have time left in the day. And one is talking about you don't have any time left in the day. If you have time left in the day, you're allowed to push it off. If you don't have any time left in the day, you got to interrupt. Shake the lulav right now. So our Mishnah is talking about there's no time left in the day. So you te'it al shulchanai. While you're at your table, you got to interrupt and do lulav. The Mishnah Shabbos. That's talking about you have time left. So that's a way of answering the question. But it actually qualifies the answer, which means that it gives a leniency. That means that basically every mitzvah, if you have time left, okay, you started eating, you're allowed to continue eating. It does, it's giving a halacha. By answering this way, you're sort of like changing the law. You're making a statement about that this is always permissible. And what you're saying is that our case in the Mishnah would not be so, qualifying it. It's only because it's very late. If it was earlier in the day, you would be able to continue eating. Afterwards, you'll shake the lulav. So this is an answer. Rav Safra gives an answer. It's a contradiction, and he wants to basically say that you have to say that the case is different. I'm sorry? Ezra, I didn't hear you.
It wasn't me. I didn't see.
Oh, okay. Someone said, okay.
I thought it was David who was saying something.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
No, I think somebody was on the phone and didn't mute themselves.
Oh, okay, fine. Yes, Binyamin, Jeffrey.
So it seemed to me that it says he was by Derek.
Uh-huh.
So he was traveling.
Right.
So he was exempt from the sukkah.
Well, he was exempt, but when he comes home, I don't know if he's still exempt. I was sort of like touching on that maybe if he's not feeling well, he's a chayla, he's coming from a long tiltula, there is a term in the Gemara that traveling makes you sick and so on, especially in those days on those rickety wagons and bumps and who knows what with horses jumping and flying all over the place. So no shock absorbers, So yeah, definitely could be sick, and that's I did sort of like mention that idea, but he did come home. I don't know if you could keep in mind he is home now, so so not necessarily does he might be had to Okay,
well, we have another. I don't know. I think we read that another Mishnah, right? That says those who are traveling, whatever,
Are
so
exempt.
they only eat in the daytime in the sukkah. If they're traveling at night, if they're traveling at day, then they only eat in the evening. So even if you come home, I think that the idea is that you only have the obligation for one part of the day.
Interesting.
So I imagine he's coming. It's evening. He traveled all day. He didn't take his lulav with him because he didn't need it in his business, and he comes back, and there's not much time left. So he's going to eat something because it's ready, and he has to make sure he says the bracha for the lulav.
Right. Anyway, good point, Jeffrey. Yeah. It's an interesting point, which really brings up when we learned that Mishnah, what does it really mean? Someone who travels by day, that he's exempt during the day, but he would be obligated at night. Does that really mean if a person just, was it majority of the day makes him exempt the rest of the day? If you're only traveling for 5 hours of the day, or 7 hours of the day versus 12, so would that mean that you're exempt the rest of the day, or does that mean no? It means that if you're traveling all day, so the whole day is when you're exempt. I guess we should look it up in Shulchan Aruch what that really means, because it is a little vague over there. I don't know if we went into it. Okay, so let's just.
Rabbi,
yes,
it talks about taking the lulav in the morning. Why is it that we don't take the lulav at night, the previous night?
Okay.
We did that.
So it does say "L'kachtem lechem b'yom harishon." Did we learn this source in the Gemara? Did we see it? I'm trying to remember. But I mean, from the pasuk it does say b'yom harishon.
Yeah, but the day starts by night.
Okay. I have to look it up. But for some reason, it slipped my mind now. If we touched on it. Anyway, but I believe it's based on that pasuk, but I'll have to take a look. Okay, so just getting back to what we did on Friday. So the Rava had said maybe there's another difference here. Like he says, who says it's even a question? My kushya. Rava like answers back in a way like this is not even a question. What are you even comparing apples with oranges? This is my kushya. Maybe this is daraisa, this is drabanan. One is a biblical, one is a rabbinic. And the case of our Mishnah is talking about lulav. Lulav, at least on the first day, is biblical, and in the Beis Hamikdash, the whole week is biblical. And davening, mincha, is drabanan. We mentioned last time. We mentioned the Rambam and the Ramban, that there's an argument if davening really is daraisa or darabanan. Davening is biblical or rabbinic, and we mentioned that even the Rambam that holds it's biblical. How does he fit with this Gemara? And the Ramban uses this Gemara as a proof to him that you see davening is rabbinic. It's not biblical because the Gemara says ha daraisa ha darabanan, that this is the lulav is daraisa, is biblical, and the davening is rabbanan. How does the Ramban says this is it's rabbanan? Gemara says it, and how does the Rambam learn that it's daraisa? So the simple answer is, well, we're talking about mincha. We're talking about mincha. Mincha is the rabbanan. Once you daven one davening, you already fulfill the obligation of the day, the biblical obligation. There is a discussion when that biblical, and this gets to David's question here. When is the biblical obligation to daven according to the Rambam? Is it at night or is it in the morning? In other words, you're obligated to daven biblically according to the Rambam every day. When does the day start? So if it goes by korbanos, sacrifices, there's a concept that sacrifices start by the morning. By korbanos. So according to that, maybe Shacharis would be the main davening of the day. If you say that the regular day, you're obligated to daven, the regular day in a Jewish day starts at night. So maybe you fulfill your biblical obligation with Ma'ariv. Interesting that Ma'ariv is really the davening that's considered a reshus. Right. We've accepted it as a chayva, but it's really it's not as doesn't have the same importance to as the other davenings. But according to the Rambam, possibly a yotze with Ma'ariv, the biblical obligation. Anyway, we're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. So that is where we got up to Friday. At least tomorrow, Mr. Shem will start new. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everyone.
Doch.